Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready to take this show home.
All right, here we go. Coming at you right away. Fill in the blank. It's blank that former Notre Dame turned USC general manager Chad Bowden said this about Trojan head coach Lincoln Riley this week. Quote, he is, as a recruiter, the best I've ever been around. There's two elements of recruiting. This is the first head coach I've been around who evaluates prospects. So when I say recruiting, this is a guy who holistically can do it all. End quote.
There's so many different words I want to use to fill in the blank here. I think inexcusable is one of them. I think immature is another one. I think blatantly wrong is another one that you could put in there. And so for the basis of my argument, I'm just going to say it's blatantly wrong that former Notre Dame USC general or former Notre Dame turned USC general manager Chad Bowden said these things, because it's blatantly wrong for a couple reasons. One, if Lincoln Riley was so fantastic at recruiting everything, then why is he only good at quarterbacks and producing offenses? Where like these defenses that have
Why
been
weren't they
horrible,
recruiting better? Why did they need to hire Chad Bowden and throw
right?
$1 million a year at him to do it?
And the other reason why it's blatantly wrong is because guess what? Lincoln Riley and Marcus Freeman's first year at their programs were the same year. And where did Marcus Freeman make it in year 3? A national championship. Where did Lincoln Riley make it in year 3? Some crappy bowl game that no one cares about at the end of the day. So, if I guess what I'm getting at is if Lincoln Riley was this great of a recruiter and so much better, then why isn't USC farther ahead than where they're at right now?
No, exactly. I mean, I think that a guy like Bowden just getting hired and trying to make a splash, especially out there in Southern California, a significant place to recruit college football players. I think that like it makes sense that he's going to throw flattery at his new head coach,
Oh yeah,
right?
exactly. But you don't need to throw shade at the same time.
And that's what I was getting to. It feels like there was some, maybe some more, kind of friction behind the scenes than
You're
we
telling
might
me
have
maybe
thought
a
between
Chauncey
Chad Bowden.
Stuckey conversation?
I don't know. Do what now?
I said maybe like a closed door Chauncey Stuckey conversation.
I mean, I don't know about that, but like, did Chad Bowden feel like Marcus Freeman was getting too much credit for the recruiting? Did he feel like he
Yeah.
wasn't? Did he feel like he wasn't being given enough credit when he was here? Like, is this part of it? The fact that he flirted with Michigan last year, got a raise out of it and a promotion to stay around, didn't even make it for another full year, and then he goes to Notre Dame's biggest rival, and now all of a sudden he's out there throwing darts and shade left and right at Marcus Freeman, a guy who, by the way, if it weren't for Marcus Freeman, no one would even know who Chad Bowden is right now. The guy might still very well be at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have gone to Wisconsin with Luke Fickell. I don't know. But Marcus Freeman, essentially got him the job here at Notre Dame, coming over from Cincinnati. So it just doesn't, again, it's one thing to throw some praise at your new boss, but all the things that you talked about, everyone knows that Lincoln Riley is obviously not that great a recruiter, as you said, with the exception of the quarterbacks. So like to throw some flattery at him is one thing, but it just feels really odd that Chad Bowden feels like he's got to throw this obvious kind of shade at Marcus Freeman when Marcus, like again, like we don't know what went on behind closed doors, but the difference between Marcus Freeman as a head coach recruiter and his predecessor as a head coach recruiter is night and day difference. And so I can't think, I can't buy into these things that he's saying, about, like that Marcus Freeman was never evaluating prospects. I can't buy into that.
Yeah, I definitely can't buy into that. I think the only thing that concerns me about this, if I had to, play devil's advocate to a degree, is I think Notre Dame is going to have a harder time recruiting that area even more now. Like I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to be a harder time getting the KVAs and the Maddens of the world. And it was already kind of slim pickings to begin with, and I think maybe that's the area where Chad Bowden kind of upped his game in terms of Marcus Freeman, is how he could kind of recruit that California area and maybe pull away some of those guys who were going to go to USC to come over to Notre Dame. I think that's really the only drawback that you're going to see comparatively is Bowden is now just going to land more of those guys to come to USC, and they're going to stay at USC. They're not really going to
Right.
give Notre Dame a second thought, I think.
And I think that when you get guys like KVA and Framo out of that area down there, again, like part of the reason why, because the biggest the biggest difference that Bowden has been able to was able to help make was the recruiting on the defensive side of the ball. So at the very least, like Lincoln Riley as Notre Dame's biggest rival being in Los Angeles, he couldn't just continue to let those guys leak out of, Southern California and go to places like Notre Dame or, wherever else they were going. He had to be
And he
able to
couldn't
lock that
recruit his
down.
own backyard.
Yeah, he had to be able to lock that down. And obviously he couldn't do it by himself. So again, it's like, well, you got to call BS on this whole stuff, because if Lincoln Riley was all these things as a recruiter that Chad Bowden is saying, Chad Bowden wouldn't be making $1 million and working for USC right now.
Yeah, obviously, Mr. Riley felt like he didn't have enough time to maybe recruit as hard as he thought, and he gave $1 million to Chad Bowden to do that now.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. Your all-time favorite Notre Dame player who nobody talks about is blank.
Do you know who I'm going to say? Do you have any ideas?
I do not, because again, like this is kind of an off the radar kind of guy. So I'm curious to see exactly what you're going to say.
This is hard for me, and I think everyone's going to throw me some shade and be like, "Oh, everyone knows him." Blah, 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 blah. I'm looking at it from a different perspective, so hear me out. And anytime I answer these questions, they're players I've seen in my lifetime, right? So, my favorite all-time Notre Dame player who nobody talks about is Jalen Smith, because of the way his career ended at Notre Dame.
People talk about Jalen Smith. You're talking about him like he's some under the radar underdog.
Yeah, but after he got hurt, it kind of became. I just feel like had he stayed healthy, we'd be having a much different conversation. But after the injury, he kind of fell off that radar. Yes, he was good at Notre Dame, and yes, he had a first good season with Dallas. But then the knee caught up with him, and really, after that is where he kind of fell. I don't know. I struggle with this question because it's so hard to like find someone that's not known but known. But again, I went with Jalen Smith. I thought he was all-time a really good linebacker, and unfortunately the injury I felt like kind of put him under the radar a bit.
Andrew, this is a good answer. Shane Walton, I think, he says All-American during a rough time for Notre Dame. This was like the Bob Day, like Shane Walton was playing corner along with Vontez Duff my first season when I got here, so like you were still too young. You probably don't even have any recollection of Shane Walton, but like Walton and Duff, like when you look at cornerback combinations, that's one of the better, like excluding going all the way back to the Lou Holtz era, that's probably between what they've got now and that Lou Holtz era, that Walton Duff combo is probably one of the better corner combos that they've had. So I think like those are both guys that I thought about. I'm going, same team in that era. I'm going Courtney Watson, number 33, another middle linebacker, converted running back. Like it just felt like Courtney Watson could just fly all over the field. Like I used to, like when we talked about him on the shows back then, I would call him Superman. And in fact, I think I asked him once if he could leap tall buildings in a single bound. So Courtney Watson is the guy. Great Notre Dame linebacker, played a little bit in the NFL. So I'm going Courtney Watson. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the Raiders are shopping former Irish tight end Michael Mayer on the trade block.
It's intriguing because they have new ownership. They overhaul the coaching staff. I never understood why they took Mayer and Brock Bowers. I know they're kind of two different tight ends, but you really can't run, a lot of two tight end sets that involves both of them being on the field at the same time. They clearly feel like Brock Bowers is the better tight end and who they want to work with going forward. And so the reason why I think it's intriguing because I think Michael Mayer can get out of a crappy situation and go have an impact on a team somewhere. And most specifically, I mean, I hope the Dallas Cowboys make him because that's who I wanted them to draft when he was coming out.
Would you rather have Mayer or Jake Ferguson at this point?
I would rather have Mayer, to be honest with you. I feel like I've seen Ferguson, and yes, he's a good pass catcher, but he's horrible blocking. He's horrible with stupid penalties. I think Michael Mayer is more disciplined. I think this team wants to run the ball more, and I think Michael Mayer is a great inline blocker, and he can slip out and be deceptive in the pass game. And so, and this isn't just the Cowboys. He can have an impact, I think, on a lot of teams and be really helpful. But I think it has to be teams that want to do a lot of a run team, because I think Michael Mayer is a great inline blocker, like I said. And if you can work in some play action, he would be great to slip out and catch the ball. So
see, we found a way. We found a way, DJ, to work.
But like he would fit like in the most ideal world, he would be excellent in any of the Kyle Shanahan disciples offenses. Sean McVay, Shanahan. I think any of those offenses that work on a lot of misdirection and hard play fakes. And
our guy Shotty is going to bring some more of that as well. So that's why he makes sense there.
Exactly, because he is a disciple. He runs that same kind of offense that they run, and he brought in a run game coordinator from Arizona to be the offensive coordinator. So clearly they want to run the ball and be physical in the trenches. And so this is why it's intriguing, because I think Michael Mayer can find a way better fit for himself and can get out of a bad organization.
Yeah, I mean, he gets out of a bad organization potentially. Apparently there's been a lot of interest in him as well, as you can imagine. And like he was a high draft pick, and he's also obviously still very young. He's only been in the league for 2 years, doesn't have any tread on the, still got a lot of tread on the tires, rather, not a lot of usage on the tread. So I think it's great for him potentially. And I think that it's great for the team that ends up getting him, because you don't have to pay him a lot. I think that he's because of the fact that he's got a couple years playing, I think that he's someone who can come in and help any team right away, doing a lot of the things that you talked about. Because like the fact that the Raiders 2 years in a row drafted tight ends, going with Mayer 1 year and Bowers the next.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah. I realize, Bowers is the more dynamic, like more, pass catching tight end and all that kind of stuff, like playmaking tight end, but it just makes zero sense. And they tried to play both of them last year, and it's just like 0 sense when you had so many other needs. So hopefully he does end up getting traded and ends up in a much better situation as a result.
And even to your point, even more is he was on like the exempt list for a few games last season as well. I know he missed some games. I don't know if it was injury, personal reasons, what it was.
Yeah.
But again, that's still less. Like he's pretty much only played like a season and a half.
Yeah.
In the NFL at most. And so there's like no tread. You get him on a rookie deal. I think it's a home run. Like any team could get him, in my opinion, and it'd be a home run. I would rather see him go to a team that's more stable. I don't want him just to go anywhere, but I think he could fit in just about anywhere.
Andrew says it would concern him, though, that Carroll wants him gone. Pete is a good talent evaluator. I don't think it's about I think it's much less about Michael Mayer and more to the fact that you've got Brock Bowers, and they need to overhaul that organization. They need to turn Michael Mayer into a draft pick or two so that they can, stock their cupboard. I think that he's someone that they're pretty confident that they can get something back for. And because of the fact that you already have Bowers, there's no reason to have Michael Mayer as well when he's basically just going to waste out there. They need more wide receivers at this point. They don't need 2 tight ends.
Yeah, it's like having 2 diamonds in your hand and saying, well, I'm good with 1 diamond, so what can I flip this other diamond into?
Exactly. So David must have come in late. Thank you for the super chat, David. We literally just did a whole segment on Notre Dame women's basketball. But he says, my take on the women's basketball team, they seem out of sorts, not playing their best. Thoughts moving forward. I think that, again, they were more, if you want to say that they are out of sorts, they were closer to in sorts against Louisville on Sunday. I like the fact that they had 24 made field goals and 14 assists on the made field goals. It's like I talked to you when you and I were talking last week, Jesse, against NC State, like that 14 assists on 24 made field goals. That's like, I think it's like 58% of the baskets had an assist. That means they're moving the ball and sharing the ball well. It was like 28% maybe against NC State a couple of weeks ago in that loss. So, I mean, they were obviously, didn't play their best. Again, double overtime on the road. It's not like they were blown out by NC State, which kind of, tends to be, I think, some people's, sort of attitude on the whole thing. But I think ultimately they're going to be just fine. And, with a little extra time off, I think they've had a little extra time to rest. And I think that I'm looking forward to this ACC tournament, seeing if they can go out there and repeat as ACC tournament champions and maybe play themselves back into a number one seed in the NCAA tournament when the selections come out in 2 weeks. A little bit less than 2 weeks, I guess. So Notre Dame announced today that country music star Zach Bryan and comedian Shane Gillis are going to team up for a show at Notre Dame Stadium September 6th, which is the football team's first of 2 bye weeks on the season. Dermot Kennedy is on the undercard as well, another singer. You in or you out on this whole thing at Notre Dame Stadium?
This is a big in for me. Shane Gillis is obviously the comedian and huge Notre Dame fan. That he's taken on this persona as kind of being Notre Dame's young celebrity, fan. I guess he was the guest picker. He was at the Notre Dame IU game. He was at he called out Nick Saban before one of the games and called him. I think he called him like Cowboy Saban or something like that. But he's just a funny guy. And at the end of the season, he even made the comment that he was so hurt about the national championship loss that
Indiana Saban. It wasn't
Indiana
that what it was?
Saban.
Like
Yeah, Indiana
Jones
Saban.
Thing? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. But at the end of the season, he made this joke, or maybe it's not even a joke anymore, that he wanted to put something on and basically raise NIL money and donate it to Notre Dame as NIL money. So, like, I don't know if that's what this is at the end of the day. Like, is Notre Dame going to get some of these proceeds to go towards their NIL fund? Because that's what he said. And so, again, I love him because he's really funny to me. He's young. He's an avid Notre Dame fan. And then, Zach Bryan is a country singer. I don't typically like country music, but I've actually listened to his music as of recently, and I'm kind of into it, to be honest with you. So I like his music. Dermot Kennedy is an Irish-born singer, so I guess that's kind of the connection there. Little less known. I think he's not really country music like Bryan is. But you put all three together. It's at Notre Dame Stadium. It's got some stuff I'm interested in. It's during a bye week, so I'm in on it as long as tickets aren't like insanely expensive.
Yeah, I'm out. I'm not country music at all. I think Gillis, I realize he's a Notre Dame fan and everybody loves him for that. I don't think he's that funny. So I'm out, mate. Maybe this is just younger crowd, but again, like me and country music, like the only country I'll listen to some Waylon and Willie and Johnny Cash and that kind of stuff. But this new stuff, I am totally out on. Alabama Jones, by the way. Thank you very much, Justin. I'm just not into the country. I'm sorry. There were a couple things, like I feel like Shane Gillis is like an elevated version of who was that? Who's the guy from a few years back? I can't even remember like what that guy, like the comedian, it'll come to me later on. I'm just not as high on him as a lot of other people. So
I think that, and a few people in the chat have said this. I think it's not that it's aimed this way, but I think it's going to hit home better with the younger Notre Dame fans, definitely compared to maybe some of the older, longtime Notre Dame fans. Because I've already had friends text me about when tickets go on sale. Can they get them? Can I
Really?
get them? Can I get
So do you
some
think
for
you might
them?
go? Do you think you would? Well, that might be hard for you because that's going to be less than a month before the big day. Now that I think
Yeah, I
about
can't
it.
really be putting out expenses like that a month and out for my wedding.
Yeah,
But
tickets go on sale this Friday at 10 a.m., by the way. So you can let your friends know, I guess. Fill in the blank. It's blank that plans for Bill Belichick's North Carolina football program being featured on HBO's off-season edition of Hard Knocks have fallen through. The Tar Heels will not be on the show
it's
after all.
disappointing. I was looking forward to seeing good old Bill Belichick, seeing how he responds in the college environment. Is he grumpy old Bill Belichick, or is he more personable, relatable with the players, that sort of stuff? Does he open up, have some more personality, and how he goes about, navigating the college football experience, because it's something he hasn't. I mean, I think he's done, but he hasn't done in a really long time. So yeah, just seeing him navigate the waters from being, obviously an all-time great NFL coach to now being a college football coach, and how that looks, how he runs practice, etc. So it's disappointing because as a football nerd, I think it would have been really cool to watch and gain that kind of insight in understanding Bill Belichick more.
Apparently, creative control was what this came down to. And so, like you can imagine, because like Vince and I were actually talking about the fact that they were going to do this yesterday, and now just a day later, we find out that it's off the table. And you can just like Bill Belichick, the whole time he was with the Patriots, they never, they wouldn't let Hard Knocks come in and do the show. And the NFL never pushed the issue with the Patriots, even though, as good as the Patriots were, obviously a lot of people would have liked to see that. But Belichick, like, oh, there's so many secrets and everything else. And I think that, kind of like, I don't know what there wouldn't necessarily be a situation you wouldn't think like the Saquon Barkley New York Giants deal last year, like that would get out there when you're talking about a college program. But it sounded like Belichick just wanted to have control over what you could and couldn't see, and that was, I think Hard Knocks was like, look, you're a college program, you need the exposure and all these different things, which is obviously part of why North Carolina wanted to do it to begin with. But at the end of the day, sounds like Belichick, in very Belichickian manner, wanted to control things. And so the whole thing blew up. I would have liked to have seen it as well. I think it would have been kind of cool to finally get to see a little bit behind the curtain of a Bill Belichick program, but not going to happen now. So Colin Cowherd called out Shedeur Sanders for wearing a backwards hat during his NFL Combine interviews last week. Cowherd says he's not a backwards hat guy for quarterbacks. Are you in or out on quarterbacks with backwards hats?
This is my favorite Colin Cowherd bit. The whole backward hat thing is like supposed to be detriment to your character and all this stuff. I'm out on this, and the other, I have a couple examples. First example is Baker Mayfield. He's never been a Baker Mayfield guy because he's been a hat backwards kind of guy. But like, what has Baker Mayfield done? He's turned himself into a solid NFL quarterback. Just had his best season ever. You could argue maybe a top 5, definitely probably top 10 quarterback in the NFL last season. And a guy that a lot of people wrote off after his first couple of years, and again has made himself into an NFL quarterback, right? But if you ask Colin Cowherd, he wears his hat backwards, so he would have been, excommunicated early on in his NFL career. The second example I have, and I know it's not a quarterback, but he was all out on Nick Sirianni because Sirianni was a backward hats guy. Well, what did Nick Sirianni just
Was
do?
he?
He just won a Super Bowl for you.
I didn't realize Sirianni was a backwards hat guy. I don't remember that.
Oh, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Dan Campbell.
Dan Quinn?
Sorry,
Quinn's
Dan
a
Quinn.
backwards hat guy.
I thought he said something about Sirianni too at one point. But anyways, it all doesn't matter because how you wear your hat is not indicative of how you are as a football player. And and to say that, you know, he might be out on Shador Sanders because he's got his hat on backwards. Well, guess what? That's why he's at the combine and taking interviews with teams. They can decide if Mr. Hat backwards is not their guy, but I guarantee it's not because his hat is backwards. So that's where I'll end this argument.
I mean, like the Dan Quinn thing, like, let me just say this, like, I'm not like, just like old white guy, yelling at the moon or whatever. Like, I was a backwards hat guy when I was young, like in high school and out of high school for a few years. I do feel like at some point, like as you go through your 20s, you turn the hat around, and you just start wearing it bill forward, right? Like at some point, I do feel like you ditch the backwards hat thing. But as pro athletes, like, they are sort of exempt from real life like the rest of us. I think that they get a pass on any of this stuff, like they put on skin tight uniforms and pads and stuff, when they go to work on Sundays. Like, I'm not going to be concerned about who's got the hat on backwards. If Dan Quinn, a head coach, and before that, a defensive coordinator, can wear the hat backwards, which, again, it's like, I feel like should the head coach be wearing the hat backwards? I'm not so big on it. I wouldn't be doing it. But the guy went to the playoffs with Washington this year, so he can do whatever he wants. And, whether you're a quarterback or whoever else, Ken Griffey Jr., like, again, like, you're probably too young to remember that, but yeah, like batting practice, all-star games, home run derbies, Ken Griffey Jr. was wearing the hat backwards. And this is the son of a Major League Baseball player. So it's like, just ease up, on all these, what you think, all these norms that you think need to be in place. They're professional athletes. They all get a free pass on any of this kind of stuff. It's not a big deal. So Nebraska head coach Matt Rule says he doesn't understand why college football has 2 transfer portals. He says there should be just one portal like college basketball has. Do you buy or sell it?
I'm selling it. I like the way they have it. I think you should be allowed a portal after the season ends because you obviously have an idea of where you stand and you might need, a better opportunity elsewhere. And I also like it at the end of spring because, again, you get out of spring ball and you have an understanding of kind of where you're at going into the fall. And, if you're buried somewhere on a depth chart, but you could be a 1 or 2 elsewhere, then what's the point? I think the reason Rule doesn't like it is because he loses players at 2 points in the season, and he's got to figure out
he's canceling his spring game because he's worried about losing players.
So, it makes sense in terms of end of season. You get, that's the thing is you always have an end of the year evaluation at the end of the season, and so when these coaches sit down with the players and have honest conversations, I don't think there's anything wrong with leaving at that point. And again, at the end of spring, what you have an end of the spring meeting and you have a conversation of where you progressed and things you need to work on over the summer and come back into the fall. So, when you're getting honest feedback at both of these kind of junctions in the football season, I think they are the most logistic if opportunities to open up the most sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm selling what Rule is saying as well. I mean, basketball only has one portal because basketball, like practice begins in October, the season ends in March sometime. So you're crossing over that winter threshold. It only makes sense in basketball to have one portal. I mean, you can have a mid-season portal. Like you don't need a second portal for college basketball. It makes 0 sense because of the way the season ends. It is a winter sport. It's completely different than football, which is, of course, a fall sport. But then, what's also different about football is they have a spring practice schedule. It's like so completely different from any of the other sports in terms of how they operate. It just makes sense, because like you said, you get to the end of the regular season, and because of the fact that there is a spring football practice, it makes sense to have a portal right after the season ends so that if those guys find a new team, they can go join up with their new team and transfer and be on the roster in the spring going through practice with that team to try to earn their spot and all that different stuff. And then, like you said, then when spring is over, as like depth charts, start to take shape and stuff like that, and guys can actually see where they either, do or don't fit in the pecking order, it makes sense to have a spring portal as well.
So the only thing I would say is I think you should only be allowed to transfer one time per.
I would agree with that.
I don't think
Second
if you
time you have to
transferred
sit out. Yeah.
right, if you transferred in the winter one, I don't think you should be able to transfer again after the spring. That's where I would draw the line, basically. But you shouldn't be able to consecutively enter both transfer portals. If you enter in the winter, you shouldn't be eligible to leave again until next year's winter, and vice versa. It's the same thing with the spring. If you come in during the spring, I don't think you should be able to leave at the end of winter. You should have to wait a full year in order to basically transfer again.
I agree. Completely agree with that. All right. Well, that is going to do it for tonight. We went extra long. We had good mailbag questions submitted for women's basketball. We started with football. I mean, if you didn't see the whole show, just go back, watch, download the podcast, whatever it happens to be. We covered a lot in this show. So
got it done.
That's right. Great stuff. I'm going to be out and about tomorrow, heading down to Greensboro, North Carolina for the ACC women's basketball tournament. The Irish will play on Friday. I believe Vince and Trevor are going to be doing the show tomorrow. And then Thursday, I'll be doing the show from Greensboro. Vince and I will have that. And I believe we're going to have a little surprise guest for you as well on Thursday's show. So you got that going for you. All right. Hit that like button before you leave. Again, appreciate everybody being here tonight and all the comments and questions and everything else. We will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.